Hello guys, welcome to another video, and today we're finally back with another upload. I know I haven't uploaded in like a few days, but that's okay because today's video is about a video called 5 Most Disturbing Audio Recordings by Chilling Scares. Chilling Scares is one of my go-to horror channels. If I want to watch some creepy stuff and do something in the background, I would watch Chilling Scares. And this guy's channel is really good, and he's very close to 2 million subs as the recording of this video. And I just saw this video come out 2 days ago, and I thought it would be a cool video to watch with you guys instead of watching it usually by myself and being alone and sad and stuff. But I hope this video does well, and I hope you guys like the video a lot because I like doing this. I like watching videos like this. The glasses, I like these glasses. Okay, I bought these glasses for videos. I just never wore them. I just never wore them until this video.
On the morning of January 2nd, 1978, a woman in California received a call asking for someone named Ray. She didn't know anyone by that name, so she simply told the caller they had the wrong number and hung up. Back then, callers had to manually enter each digit of the number they wanted to call in a rotary phone, and accidentally entering the wrong number was a common mistake.
Damn.
So she didn't think much of this and moved on with her
Rotary
day.
dial.
However, things took a horrifying turn that evening when she received another call from the same person. And what she heard on the other end of this audio call was extremely disturbing.
Hello? Hello?
Oh yeah, something's going on. You better pick it up. You gotta answer back. Never mind. Maybe ignore it, arm yourself, and lock the doors and windows.
The man who was politely asking to speak with someone named Ray earlier was now threatening to end her life. What's worse is that this audio call wasn't a baseless threat or a troll. The person calling was later found out to be the Golden State Killer, one of the most infamous serial killers in U.S. history. He terrorized California for over a decade, from 1974 to 1986, and operated across multiple counties, including Sacramento, Ventura, Santa Barbara, and Orange County. What made him more terrifying than most other serial killers was just how precise and thorough he was. Instead of committing the crime whenever he got the chance, he would often plan months in advance. He would stalk his victims, learning everything about their daily lives and routines to find the right opportunity. This also included surveying the area around their home to plan escape routes. Sometimes he would break into his victims' homes beforehand to unlock windows, unload guns, and plant the gear he was later going to use for the crime. He would also call his future victims many times leading up to the—
So instead of a heist to rob a bank or a jewelry store or anything of the sort, this is a heist to take someone's life. That's what it is.
The crime and threaten them, similar to the call you heard earlier. This was all a part of his act, with these calls serving as a way for him to mentally torment his victims ahead of time. When he eventually broke into their home for the last time, he would often tie them up and make himself at home, even cooking in their kitchen on occasion. Put simply, he was extremely confident in his planning, and unfortunately it worked. By the end of 1986, he had broken into different homes over 120 times, and in more than 64 victims, 3 of which were children. However, despite the authorities having tons of evidence against him, like fingerprints, footprints, masks, multiple rings, and many different sketches from witnesses, nothing led to a name. He would even call and taunt the police and families of his victims, daring them to catch him. But despite all this, the case remained cold for over 40 years. That is until the late 2010s, when a new kind of detective work changed everything. You see, investigators already had plenty of DNA evidence from the killer. However, his DNA didn't match the limited samples they had in their database. But in 2016, a very
find his
distant
ass.
relative of the Golden State Killer took a DNA ancestry test through one of the companies like 23andMe. The
What?
DNA data from this
What is he
company
gonna
was
do? Oh yeah, he's gonna link to his ancestry to see if he still has the ability to kill somebody through his ancestry tree. Through his family tree, I mean. But really?
was aggregated by a company called GED Match. And the FBI then used this extensive database to see if any of the samples matched with the DNA evidence they had. While they didn't find the killer, they did find a match with one of his very distant relatives. This allowed them to go through the whole family tree with over 1,000 members and eventually find the person they were looking for. After 40 long years, the identity of the man behind this creepy call was finally made public.
He's
On
probably
April
old.
24, 2018, authorities arrested then 73-year-old Joseph James
Yeah,
D'Angelo.
I'm sorry,
the Gold-
but you caught him way too late. I'm sorry, you caught him way too late. You caught the man too late. Maybe if you caught him like in the good old like prime years, like 20, around his like 20s, somewhere there.
The Golden State Killer. He was a Vietnam War veteran and an ex-police officer from
He
the
should
Santa
have
Barbara
died
County
in Vietnam, I'm
Sheriff's
just kidding.
Office. Investigation of his
That
past
is even
also revealed
more-
a
that's
chilling
really morbid,
instance
I'm
from
sorry.
July 1979 when he was arrested for shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent. In hindsight, it's obvious that he was
great.
going to use both of these items for one of his crimes. And the
Yeah.
reason he tried to steal them instead of paying was because he didn't want the sale tied back to his name in any way.
Yeah,
in July
obviously.
of 2020, Joseph pled guilty to 13 counts of murder and 13 counts
Bro,
of kidnapping
the reason
and a plea
why
bargain
he
to avoid the
pled guilty of every single crime is because he knows he's going to die in there anyway.
death penalty. He was given 13 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and is now serving his time at a California state prison.
What is parole gonna do? Nothing. His family's probably dead by then. His family probably is dead. So there's no point in giving this old ass frail man parole at all. Or even if you give him that, it doesn't matter.
Prison. The recorded audio calls he made to his soon-to-be victims have gone down as some of the most disturbing pieces of audio ever
Bro.
recorded.
He's gonna go to hell for sure. I know that.
On the 1st of December 2017, Reddit user Drudagon17 made a Reddit post hoping to find an explanation for the terrifying screams he heard
that
while
guy-
on
that guy
vacation.
is, like,
What's causing
he's too
these
stubborn
screams?
to admit his wrongs.
So, I'm not really sure what this is. I've had a lot of people tell me different things, but no one really knows for sure. Maybe someone here could help me shed some light. Alongside this, he linked to a recording of what sounded like a person screaming at the top of their lungs.
Bro, that's a murder. What are you doing?
The OP
That's a
then
murder,
went into
like,
detail
no,
describing
no,
the
that's a
circumstances
murder. Call
surrounding
the
these
police,
disturbing
arm
noises,
yourself,
reading.
and investigate.
Earlier in the
If
year,
there's
I
killers
went on a
there,
long
go
road
kill
trip
the
across
man.
the states,
To
mainly
protect
visiting the
yourself, of
national
course.
parks and a few cities
And
along
save
the
the
way.
other person.
Towards the end of the trip, we found ourselves
Really,
staying in the
bruh?
small town of West Yellowstone. This appeared to be an ideal base whilst we explored Yellowstone National Park. We booked into
Yellowstone,
a
that's
pretty
in
creepy
Canada?
but cheap motel just
is
off the
that?
main
Oh, I
street
think
for a
that's-
couple of nights. Me and my
that
fiance
America?
had one room, my
don't even
parents
know.
another. On the first morning there, we planned to get up early, catch the sunrise, and hopefully
Oh, wait,
spot
it
some of the
is.
local wildlife. So
America.
our alarms were set for 5 a.m. At about 4:45 a.m., I was woken by loud banging on the door, followed by crying and shouting. I instantly jumped out of my bed thinking the worst had happened. I opened the door to my mom in a state of panic, saying, "There's someone screaming, a woman screaming." There, clear as
Go
day, I could
call
hear a
the
woman
police.
screaming.
What are you
It sounded as though it
doing?
was within 100 feet of us. Mom claimed it had been happening for the last 30 minutes. We wanted to call the police, but had no phone signal, no phones in the rooms, and we were the only people about. This on its own is
Okay.
pretty terrifying.
I understand the no
but what
signal
made this
part, but-
encounter even more unnerving
Pay
was
the
what happened
phone
next,
bill.
with the OP and his family having a very bizarre interaction with local law enforcement,
Oh
stating,
wait, there's no phone signal.
then
I'm an
after I'd
idiot.
been hearing the scream for about half an hour, so roughly an hour
That's
since
not
it
funny.
started,
That's
a
fucking
police
sad.
officer seemed to appear out of nowhere. He started to ask questions about what we were doing and why we were up. We thought he'd come about the screams, so we quickly told him everything.
Oh yeah,
He then heard
that's the murderer right there. No, like cop comes out of nowhere at such a convenient time, like this cop here, and no way, out of the blue, he would ask what he's doing, what you guys are doing here, and now talking about the screams, and now they're probably gonna kill you. You're dead. I'm sorry.
heard the scream and sped off towards town. The screaming got less frequent and eventually stopped, so we decided to
Because
go about
they're
our
dead.
day. We saw all the lovely sights of Yellowstone and even showed several park rangers the video to see if it's an animal. They all said they've not heard anything like it before.
I'm pretty
so
sure it's a
when we
woman
got back into town that evening, we
pleading
stopped into
and
the
fighting
sheriff's
for her
office to
lives
try and get
as
some
they
information.
get
This
attacked
was met
by
with
this
a lot of
police
hostility
officer.
from both the lady at reception, who eventually closed the shutter in our face, and the same officer we had seen that morning. They both said exactly the same thing. It almost sounded like a script. "Sorry, ma'am, but that was an intoxicated woman yelling for her boyfriend." I don't quite understand how they can put that down to someone shouting at their boyfriend.
How do you know that?
I get people get really wasted, but not to the point where you just scream
Yeah,
and never
no
say any
one's like,
words. So, what was the source of the
He just
disturbing
starts
screaming Dredagon
It's a
heard
murder
that night?
by
The
the
most
cop
prevalent theory I've
and
come
the other guy
across
who's
is that
ever
these
else is
noises were
involved.
coming from an animal, more specifically a mountain lion. This makes a lot of sense since mountain lions are native to the Yellowstone wilderness. More importantly, their screams are eerily similar to what the OP heard during his stay in that area.
Similar. I don't hear that. I have good hearing, but like I have good hearing, but there's no way it would die down all of a sudden like that.
That said, it's still possible that the police officers were telling the truth and that these screams were coming from an intoxicated woman. The pitch of the second scream in the OP's recording in particular is a lot more human-like than
That's
something
the
coming
point.
from an animal.
There's no way it switches up like that. That is so good pitch. That's obviously
One person
a
on
woman.
YouTube even tried to explain this uncanny difference, stating that the first round
They're
of
getting
screaming
murdered.
sounds like it's coming
Help
from a
them.
mountain lion,
The
and the
cop
second
got
time
away with
sounds
that
like a
murder.
person
What are you
screaming back at the
doing?
animal. Maybe they were just annoyed and were trying to scare away the
Not
animal or get it to
annoyed.
shut up.
That sounds
While this
like
could have
bloody
been
murder.
the case,
Don't
most of
you
the screaming noises
understand
OP
that?
heard were likely coming from a mountain lion.
Nah,
Since,
that's
according to
bloody
his
murder.
post,
That-
he didn't hear any
that
cries
scream
for
pitch,
help or
I
other
used
words
to
in these
scream a lot as a
noises.
little kid.
Even if it
I used to scream a lot, like when I was a little kid, and it sounds like similar to that, close to that. And that was me being in distress and whatever. That sounds like bloody murder to me, or whatnot. That's obviously. I mean, there's no way. There's no phone signal come conveniently. The cop's there at a convenient, obvious time, and everything else. And the cop's sketchy too. To be honest, I'm surprised you did not have a cop as a suspect because cop bias and all that. They're probably not gonna do that or whatnot.
Even if it were coming from a highly intoxicated woman, it's safe to assume that she would say something aside from just yelling at the top of her lungs.
Unless they're being murdered or stabbed to death. How do you not? Maybe they don't know, but it could be a murder. I'm just saying, that's a murder. Sounds like a murder. A plausible murder at Yellowstone.
But if that's true, why did two different police officers tell the same lie? Some
Because they're in on it. They did the worst thing under the sun, and then they murdered her. They did that, and then no witnesses, so they killed her. It's because they're in on it. That's why.
Some people speculated that they did so just to avoid scaring off tourists, or that they were just pulling a prank. But
Prank.
from what I've seen,
Oh yeah, I just killed somebody. Let's make a prank out of it. Yeah, let's make a prank that was just a good October Halloween prank. Let's say it's a good old night. We killed somebody. Let's make a prank out of it. Prank video like Logan Paul or whatever the heck is, or Jake Paul. I don't know which one. I forgot. Anyway, yeah, this was obviously a murder. Like, and it's so convenient. It's the way that the cop was there conveniently, out of the blue. I'm gonna assume it's like they killed somebody and it was in a forest. They recently killed somebody. You know, they did their like terrible like mentally ill stuff, and then they killed him. And yeah, it's game over. She died, and we had two cops that got away with it.
Drudagon was most likely lying about this part of his story. It's entirely possible that after learning about the surprisingly normal origin of these creepy noises, the OP used this encounter to craft a disturbing story they could post on Reddit. Especially since at one point during his original post, he mentions showing the recording to multiple park rangers. Now, even if these rangers weren't 100% positive, they would still make the obvious connection with the similar animal noise that's common in that region. Drudagon also mentioned looking it up on YouTube and not finding any videos that could explain the disturbing screams.
If it turns out
even
to be
though when searching
actual,
screaming
like,
in Yellowstone on YouTube, one of the first results is a 9-year-old video showcasing
if it actually is a lion, then I'm sorry, and I admit to that me being wrong, and I'm wrong.
a mountain lion scream. That being said, it's been over 7 years since the original post, and Drudagon hasn't posted any updates since.
That could be a mountain lion.
So whether this was a mountain lion or something else more disturbing, we'll likely never know the truth.
It sounds like a murder, though. It sounds like
certainty.
getting cops. But the cops, though, it's weird. I don't gotta. I'm painting a mental picture right now, and that with the mom and the other one, and being at a very on that. In that situation, and seeing or imagining two cops being there, very convenient, and a very convenient time after the screams have stopped. I'm pretty sure it's a murder, because there's no way it could not be a murder, because and then it got weaker, and then, yeah, the cops are weird.
In February 2016, the residents of Forest Grove, Oregon began hearing a strange, high-pitched noise in the area.
Okay, what was that?
Residents of Forest Grove.
What was that?
In February 2016, the residents of Forest Grove, Oregon began hearing a strange, high-pitched noise in the area.
That sounds like... What was that sound? It sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like... That's a noise I've never heard, but I feel like I can compare it closely to something else. Kind of unfamiliar content kind of thing.
This eerie noise was limited to the city of Forest Grove and the wilderness surrounding it. It could only be heard for a few minutes at a time. It would begin blaring randomly throughout the day, and often late into the night before going away for a few hours. One of the most disturbing aspects of this noise was how quickly it spread to the entire city. Its tone was deeply uncomfortable, resulting in a lot of people calling the police in distress.
It's happened twice tonight. It's happened about 5 times during the last 7 days, and the neighbor beside me, we can't even hear each other in the backyard. Neither one of us can figure out what's happening.
Throughout that February, emergency services received over 200 calls from concerned citizens, some even reporting physical symptoms from hearing the noise. But one question was on everyone's mind: where was this screeching noise coming from? One of the first theories that came up was that the noise was coming from a gas leak, something that could possibly be that loud.
Gas leak? I think it's something... I don't know, something more...
However, the Northwest Natural Gas Company quickly shut down this idea, stating that if there was a gas leak, they would have become aware of it already. Also, a gas leak sounds more like a jet taking off rather than a screeching sound reported. On top of that, they pointed out that if there was a gas leak big enough to cause this much noise, the smell of the leaking gas would spread throughout the city as well. Another theory that came up was that this was the result of trapped air and sewer lines escaping through a manhole.
I mean, that would be a big old manhole.
However, a major flaw in this theory was that if it were true, why did the noise only begin in February of 2016? The fire marshal, on the other hand, suggested the idea that it might be coming from someone's faulty air conditioning system. This is because many dysfunctional systems emit a very high-frequency sound, similar to what the residents of Forest Grove were hearing.
But for all of that to happen at the same time?
The truth is, this noise could have been coming from any number of sources, including construction equipment or a broken emergency siren.
Or that.
Unfortunately, the sound appeared to be coming from all directions, making it pretty much impossible to find its origin and verify any of these theories. While everyone was desperately trying to figure things out, the daily noise was becoming more and more unsettling with each passing day. But the eerie noise then suddenly disappeared just as quickly as it had begun. Over 9 years later, and this strange noise is still an unsolved mystery. That said, I believe the most likely theory is also the most boring one, that this whole thing was a prank or hoax by someone with a horn of some kind. You see, after getting—
That's impossible. That sounds impossible, because if the sound would happen from anywhere, in any direction, anyway, that would be impossible. That would be impossible. Because if it's happening, if the noise is happening all over and all sides, all over town, you would need a huge group of people to do that. That would be such a... If they have the same horn, I'm pretty sure they're going to be a bit off sync too, because they can't all be in sync. They're playing a video or something, or a horn. And plus, the speakers, if they even have a speaker, I'm pretty sure it doesn't add up to me. I think it's something wrong with something else. It's got to be something else other than a prank. There's no way. No one would ever, like, in the middle of the night, have this noise and have it be a prank. There's no way.
After getting overwhelmed by the number of calls from Forest Grove residents, the local police station began investigating the phenomenon more seriously. Amid their search, they put out a statement warning any potential pranksters, reading, "While some might find it comical, interesting, and mysterious, it's unlawful if it's being done on purpose. If this is the case, the individual caught will face possible repercussions." A couple days after this statement came out, the noise vanished and hasn't returned since. It's almost as if whoever was behind this realized that the prank was not worth the trouble and stopped. Of course, all this is just a theory on its own.
But unless someone comes... If it came from all directions, wouldn't it have to be more than one person? And plus, that's so strange to me. That still is strange. I'm still thinking about it.
Forward with a confession, I doubt we'll ever learn the truth about the origin of this disturbing noise.
If it is a prank, they won't. Because they don't want to get in trouble.
On March 2nd, 2013, an anonymous user made an entry on 4chan talking about a creepy radio hijacking they experienced as a kid. The post read, "A creepy, I think, audio file which I've always been curious about. Back in 1994/1995, when I recorded this off of the radio, I told myself I'd never make a copy of the tape, having freaked myself out.
Interesting.
But it's been sitting in the back of a desk drawer and in the back of my mind for 16 years now, and now I'm just curious. The weird stuff starts about 16 seconds in. Around 1995, I was about 15. I used to stay up late in my room listening to the radio on a boombox with an integrated tape recorder. I'd dial through the stations, and when I heard something interesting, I'd hit record for a while and then move on. One night, I came across this. I don't think this was the beginning of the broadcast, but I caught a lot of it. Right at the end, an announcer says that the station I was tuned to was WKCR 89.9 New York. There are a bunch of names and dates in there, but I've never run into anything else like this. Alongside this was a link to an audio file that starts off quite normal with a section from a 1993 song by Billy Cobham. It then abruptly transitions into a violin section from a song called Golden Sonata by Henry Purcell. The audio then morphs into a bone-chilling, high-pitched scream of sorts. This alone is extremely creepy, but the audio doesn't stop there. Soon after this high-pitched scream, it morphs into the sound of a woman taking deep breaths.
Yeah, that's haunted. No way that's haunted.
This breathing pattern repeats a few times, ultimately leading into the sound of a woman reading seemingly random names and dates in an almost whisper. This voice keeps repeating the same 9 names and dates over and over again.
Maybe it's
a little
like
investigation
a
shows
tape.
that the
Maybe
names
they,
and
like,
dates are taken from their
put the
obituaries.
victims' names in
The
it
two
and
most notable names
whispered
among
it.
these belong to Frank Oppenheimer, the brother of the creator of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and Barry Joseph Valentino Jr., one of the victims of the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing in 1988. However, from what I've seen, there's no correlation between any of the names besides the fact that they're all dead. After repeating
Yeah,
these names
because
for a
they're
few minutes,
dead.
the broadcast goes
Obviously.
back to normal with a seemingly routine call sign announcement.
You're tuned to WKCR FM New York, 89.9 on your dial. Colombian music is running a little late. It will be starting in a few minutes.
Now, when the anonymous user originally posted this on 4chan, it received mixed reactions. Some people were deeply creeped out by it, while others were skeptical and believed the OP made this whole thing up. So, what's the truth? Well, there's evidence supporting both sides of the argument. The thing is, after receiving a few requests, the OP posted the full audio clip on YouTube with a channel named Ravenmouth. Searching it on Google shows that the OP has a Reddit account by the same name. With this, we can see that a couple of weeks after his 4chan post, Ravenmouth posted the same radio hijacking story on the No Sleep subreddit, which is mainly about believable but not always true disturbing stories. Near the end of this post, Ravenmouth also added a new section that wasn't present in his 4chan post, reading, "Unfortunately, and for this I sincerely apologize, it never ever stops. I told you this was just something I'd found, and I swear to you that that's true. It really did happen that way. It's more than that though. I don't really know how long it takes. A few weeks or months from now when you're alone and suddenly you hear the keening, quavering sound rise up like it's crawling out of your spine and into your skull, you'll understand. When that night comes, if you listen closely to what comes after the horrible sound, you'll realize that the woman will be reading your name. New names. You'll play it for your friends, your family, add their names. I hope desperately that if I can make the list long enough, add enough names, then they'll take mine off and leave me alone. I'm sorry." This is plenty of evidence to show that this story is fictional and Ravenmouth made it all up. However, he remains adamant that
pasta shit, like it reminds me of some creepy pasta shit. But still, it was really scary. Bruh, that reminds me of some creepy pasta shit. Like, no way. No way. That just literally reminds me of something from Creepypasta. Like, I couldn't even play this. Put my name, I'll go mentally ill. Then after that, if I want to stop it, I gotta have to go give that information or audio to someone else.
That while he did embellish the story a bit for the Reddit post, he still did record the audio from the radio when he was a teenager. So, could the WKCR station have actually been hijacked by someone? It's entirely possible. Radio hijackings are not a new phenomenon, and were certainly a thing back when this would have happened. But WKCR is owned by a college, and ran almost entirely by college students. When asked about it, the WKCR team stated, "As far as we know, this did take place on WKCR airwaves. In terms of the claim that it was a hijacking, that is very unlikely. WKCR is a weird place with weird programmers, probably just some late-night new music programmer having fun on the mic." Put simply, Ravenmouth was likely telling the truth, but what he thought was a creepy hijacking was just the artsy experiment of a college student. Although this, of course, cannot be 100% confirmed.
Maybe. Yeah, but maybe not. But, you know, yeah, I guess. That makes sense.
Ramadan has begun. Alhamdulillah, we've made it. With every fast,
it had to be so boring, though.
On March 1st, 1999, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded an ominous sound coming from the ocean. This is what it sounds like at 16 times speed.
Sounds like a big, like, fish, like...
This sound,
bigger than
named
my
Julia,
entire house
lasted for a
big,
whole
like
2
20
minutes and 43 seconds, and was powerful enough
It's
to be
probably bigger
detected
than
across
this
the
entire
entire
island.
Equatorial Pacific Ocean hydrophone network.
probably a
Hydrophones,
giant.
for those who don't know, are basically underwater microphones. They were originally installed to detect submarines during the Cold War and were later converted to be used for general ocean research. This network became popular in 1997 when it captured multiple strange sounds coming from within the ocean, including the now iconic bloop. According to the official explanation, the sound heard in this recording was caused by ice quakes and large icebergs, or by icebergs scraping the ocean floor. Julia was recorded nearly 2 years after this one. However, unlike bloop, it doesn't have an explanation. Due to the high loudness of Julia, scientists weren't able to pinpoint its exact location. One potential solution that's been floating on the internet for a while now is that Julia originated from underwater volcanic activity. Sadly, this theory falls apart quickly upon inspection. This is mainly because there was also recorded audio coming from an underwater volcano called Upsweep, and it sounds nothing like Julia. A somewhat more interesting theory that tries to explain Julia is that the sound originates from an unknown sea creature. And while this does sound like science fiction at best, it feels a lot more feasible when you consider the fact that we're yet to explore over 80% of the ocean in detail. However, the very idea of an ocean creature big enough to produce a sound audible from thousands of kilometers away is terrifying, and honestly quite out there. The sound dubbed Julia is one of many underwater sounds recorded that have yet to be identified.
Yeah, because it won't. Because if we went down there, we'd be dead. The deep sea one is interesting. But not something I want to go. Nowhere. I don't want to go down there because I would be freaking dead. Also, like and subscribe. Because, we're going to do more videos like this. And do more reactions too. And also, subscribe to Chilling Scares. They're very close to 2 million. And, original video and video in the description. Until next time. Dancing that out.